The experiment will now begin.
Hey guys, the WillGamer99 here, and welcome to my early game pathing guide for Eternal Return Black Survival. If you just started playing this game, then you can already tell that this game has a pretty steep learning curve. So I'm hoping that this video can help lessen that a bit. In this video, I'll be going over what I think are the most important concepts you need to get a good start in a round of Eternal Return. But before I start, I want to give a quick shout out to Art Like Frosty and Aetherus. Both of them helped me out a ton while I was doing research for this video, and this video would not be possible without them. Aeth also streams his game fairly often on Twitch, and his streams are really informative for new players, so I recommend checking him out when you have the time. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get started. So the first thing you need to do to make sure you have a good early game actually happens outside the game. You need to have a good route. Now there are many routes you can take for each weapon in Eternal Return, but not all of them might be viable. Some of them might even be straight up trash. So then how can I tell if my route is trash? Well, I usually use these three questions to figure that out. How many areas does the route visit? How rare are your necessary items? And does the order of the zones make sense? Let's start off by talking about the first question. Generally, you want to keep the number of different zones below 6. Some 6-zone routes can be viable, but less is usually better. Too many zones and your build will take way too long to complete compared to your opponents. There's a pretty cool tool Sparkus the Unicorn made that might help you get started with optimizing your route. You just go to his website, www.lumiacraft.xyz, plug in your build, and the website would generate multiple build paths containing your items. The link to that is in the description below. Well, that's all for that. Let's move on to the second question. Another thing you want to ask yourself is how rare are the items you're trying to build? Don't focus your build too heavily around stuff like meteorite or mithril because they're both only found by chance. I know I personally had matches where I found neither despite killing like 30 bears and wolves combined. When going for these items, you always want to have an alternative item in mind. Another item you should be wary about is Tree of Life. In a given match, only 3 Tree of Life spawn on the map. While you might get lucky and find a Tree of Life or Tree of Life related items in a supply box, it's really not a good idea to rely on RNG. Unlike Mithril or Meteorite, however, you can focus your build around Tree of Life items if you so desire. This is because the Tree of Life has a set spawns throughout the match. As of patch 18, a Tree of Life will spawn at Hotel at the start of night 1, Forest at the start of day 2, and at Cemetery at the start of night 2 at these set locations. Just be prepared to fight for it because your opponents might have the same plan. The final thing to consider is if the order of your zones makes sense. You always want to make inventory management easier for yourself. Consider the build you're going and the items you can craft along the way. By combining items, you reduce the amount of space they take up. Also consider if you can equip said item instead of keeping it in your inventory. With this in mind, you are now ready to make your own builds in Eternal Return. Now, to clarify, just because your route fits all 3 criteria doesn't mean it's good. Instead, they're more of an indicator to know when your build is bad. It's hard to make a criteria for making a good build because the game's always getting changed and the meta is always getting updated. And making a good build is all about experimentation anyways. So go wild and you might end up with a hidden gem. Well, this should seem a bit familiar to those of you who have been following my channel. After all, I covered this topic a while back in my Duel Tournaments recap video like a little more than a month ago. Back then, this is what I said. So, to summarize, this is what I learned. First of all, you should use your abilities to get around the map faster. Don't be afraid to use your beverages, because you can always make more. Secondly, have good inventory management. In other words, don't waste time making room for your items. Third, know the map, and try to minimize backtracking. And finally, memorize your recipes. I didn't really spend that much time reading crafting recipes this tournament, But if I did, I would have fallen even further behind. My thoughts on this topic have not changed. If your character has a movement ability, especially ones that jump walls, then you should use it while looting early. And game knowledge, such as knowing what you need at any given time, knowing the map, and knowing your build are crucial for success in this game. One thing I did fail to mention back then though is that you shouldn't spend too much time in one area if you can't find an item. This is because all items have limited spawns. The number of items that can be found in a given area is indicated by this little number in parentheses. If you can't find the item you need, then there's a chance that there might be none left. So make sure to have an alternate area in mind, especially if the item you need is one of these highly contested items. You want to prioritize easy to make food early. Early game is all about how fast you can finish your build, so you don't want to spend too much time making epic foods or beverages. Some good early game food include curry bun, garlic bread, egg bun, acupuncture needle, pound cake, and orchid. As you can see, most of these items, with the exception of pound cake, are just made up of 2 items. They're fast to build and that's why they're good for the early game. Similarly, some good early beverages include ice water, honey water, soju, and honey milk. Ice water is especially nice since you can use them later to make cold noodles, a pretty decent food for the mid-game. Now, you probably already know that, like in most MOBAs, your character is able to level up, gaining more skills and additional benefits along the way. However, the way you level up is a bit different in this game, so I'm going to do my best to explain the system. In this game, you have mastery levels in addition to your character level. You gain XP for your character when you level up in a certain mastery. Notice how you gain XP for searching here, yet your character XP bar doesn't go up. That's because you're gaining XP for your search mastery instead. By pressing the V key in game, you can check the status of all your masteries. By hovering over each one, you can see how you can gain XP for each category, how much XP you need to get to the next level, and the benefits you'll get from leveling them up. Like here for example, this shows that you can level up your health mastery by making food and taking damage. Each time you level up your health mastery, you will also gain some percent HP and get closer to leveling up your character. You may also note that there's a mastery for each weapon type. You can level up your weapon mastery by crafting weapons of the type and using them. The mastery for each weapon is separate, so you might feel a bit weaker if you change your weapon type, even if the stats of the new item are technically better. At mastery level 7, you also unlock a special weapon skill binded to your D key. These skills are different for each weapon type, so I suggest reading up on them before using. Hunting can provide multiple benefits to your character. They're good for farming XP and can drop rare items if you need them in your build. However, hunting, like almost anything else in the game, also takes time, and time is something you just don't have a lot of. So while it might be good to hunt every animal you see late game, you shouldn't spend more than 3 seconds per animal early. If you need leather super early in your build, like when you need it to get your green item, I recommend killing chickens to get them. While chickens only have around a 50% chance to drop leather, they're really easy to kill and usually spawn in groups of 4. Bears, wolves, and wild dogs also have a guaranteed chance to drop leather, but those might take a little longer to kill. Try to at least have your blue weapon before attempting to fight them, or else you might end up wasting too much time. Bears and wolves are also the main sources you can find meteorite and mithril. However, like I said in section 1, don't rely on them too much since their drop chances are fairly low. Almost everything you do in Eternal Return has a chance to generate noise. This includes looting, crafting, and of course, fighting, among others. Noise appears as a red icon on your minimap, so be wary when you see one nearby. It means someone's there. You should also try to listen for sound cues. By listening to the game's sound, you can figure out where people are. Here are some common ones you should look out for. Another way to figure out where your enemies are is through the usage of cameras. Cameras give vision around the location where you placed it so you can always observe an area from afar. They also reveal nearby traps so that you don't accidentally walk into them. These cameras are especially important for squishy range builds because this might happen if you face check a bush. But if you have a camera, you can escape a lot easier. Abilities like Zahir's Q can also clear bushes if you don't have a camera available. Finally, we get to talk about the most exciting part of playing this game: fighting other players. Fighting other players is a good way to get mastery for your weapon and maybe even get a few kills in the process. However, there's a time to fight and a time to run away when you see an enemy player. In general, you should not fight someone who has more items than you. To know what they have, you can press tab to check your opponent's build. While there are a few exceptions to this rule, like if you're playing a super early game build, most of the time, you should just run away. You also shouldn't overcommit to a fight before finishing your build. Don't spend more than 15 to 20 seconds fighting another player if you still have an important item to complete. That's precious time you're wasting there. This also counts for the time you need to rest. Basically, don't fight a difficult opponent before finishing your build if you don't have enough food to heal up afterwards. Finally, don't overcommit to a chase. If your opponent runs away, just let them run away. You bully them out of the area so they're already at a disadvantage. Overcommitting to a chase will cause both of you to get behind and increase your chances of a loss. This is even more dangerous in duos and squads where the whole enemy can just show up to kill you. So what do you do when someone chases you instead and refuses to give up? Well, that's just a bit unlucky. Try to run away and find another route to fill your items if you can. You're gonna be at a disadvantage, but hey, that's just the nature of battle royales. You win some, you lose some. That's all there is to it. Well, that's pretty much all I have to say for this video. You should now have a pretty good idea of what you need to do for the early game in order to finish your build. What you do after? Well, that's up to you. Maybe you want to craft some better food to level up your health mastery. Maybe you want to make some traps and go for a trap build. Or maybe you just want to fight and level up your weapon mastery instead. Whichever the case, do your best to continue leveling and you might just become the last one to survive. I hope this guide was helpful and I'll see you all in the next one. Later.